The day Brandon Lee almost threw away millions started with a guy laughing in his face behind a strip mall in Austin. The manager of the tech repair shop was smoking next to the dumpster and watched Brandon struggling with a half-broken office chair he had pulled from the trash. When Brandon set the chair down to catch his breath, he saw it. A beige desktop tower from the early 2000s, lying on its side panel half missing, like someone had kicked it off a desk. The manager shook his head. "Man, that thing is dead. We gutted it last week." Brandon just said, "If it is dead, you do not mind if I take the body." The man snorted and went back inside. Mini win. Free computer parts. Mini loss. He could feel the burn in his shoulders already. The tower was heavier than it looked. Dust packed into every vent. He hugged it to his chest and waddled it to the bus stop because his old Civic had died 3 months earlier. On the bus, people stared at the filthy case resting between his feet, fan grill caked with gray lint. One kid smirked and whispered to his friend. Brandon pretended not to notice, but when the bus hit a pothole and the tower clanged on the metal floor, the power button flickered green for half a second. That tiny flash was the first time the story tilted. Something inside still had a pulse. At home, he cleared a space on the kitchen table, pushed aside instant noodle packets and his overdue electricity bill, and hooked the tower to an old monitor. The power supply whined like a tired mosquito. The machine booted into a forgotten copy of Windows 7 with a background photo of a golden retriever. No password. He grinned. Easy. There were old tax folders, photos from some family vacation, and a folder on the desktop named Mining Rig Backup. He clicked it, heart bumping faster, and the whole system froze, fan screaming, screen locked on that smiling dog. Then the power supply popped and the tower went dark while that folder name still floated in his head. Most people would have tossed the thing back in the dumpster after that burn smell. Brandon unplugged everything instead and sat on the floor with his laptop, searching for ways to revive a dead power supply without spending money. Mini climax, he remembered an old parts bin at his friend Miguel's place. Miguel liked to joke that Brandon was a raccoon with a student loan, living off trash. Miguel let him dig through a milk crate full of dusty components. After an hour of trial and error, they found a compatible supply, slightly sticky with some unknown spill. Back at the apartment, the tower came back to life, this time with a louder fan but a steady boot. Brandon moved slower now, like the machine might shatter if he clicked too fast. He opened the Mining Rig Backup folder and found a mess of text files, a folder named Wallets, and an ancient installer for a Bitcoin client from 2010. He knew about crypto the way most people did, background noise on Twitter. Early adopters, memes, charts. He also knew that 2010 was practically the stone age of Bitcoin, when people had mined on home computers for fun. For a moment he let himself imagine a forgotten fortune, then forced the thought away. Probably a couple of coins sent years ago, maybe already moved. Obstacle after obstacle stacked up. The old wallet files would not open on that crusty system. The antivirus kept screaming, and the hard drive clicked every few minutes with a sound that made his spine tense. Miguel texted asking if he had found anything and followed it with a joke about a finder's fee. Brandon felt the first sharp jab of paranoia. If this thing was actually worth something, every extra person who knew became a problem. He closed the chat window and started copying the entire Mining Rig Backup folder to a USB drive, watching the progress bar crawl while the drive clicked louder and louder. At 93%, the copy stalled and the system froze again. The next hours were just work. No drama, only cables, plastic, and risk. He pulled the hard drive from the old tower, wiped his hands on his jeans, and talked himself through every step like he was disarming a bomb. He borrowed a USB dock from a campus lab where an old professor still let him wander in, technically not a student anymore but still familiar. The professor raised an eyebrow at the dusty drive, but Brandon just said he was recovering photos for a friend and walked out with it. On his own laptop, he booted a clean Linux USB session so he would not infect anything. The drive spun up through the dock, its vibration buzzing against the desk. He could feel it through his fingertips when he steadied it. It was warm, humming, strangely alive. Mini climax, the Mining Rig Backup folder appeared, intact this time. He copied everything to an encrypted folder, then disconnected the dock and just sat there breathing. Next came the Bitcoin client. He downloaded an up-to-date wallet, followed guides on importing legacy wallet files, and waited while the software chewed through the old data. There were moments where the progress bar stopped and he thought he had killed it. He kept his hands away from the mouse, as if touching anything would scare the numbers away. Then the wallet finally loaded a list of addresses. 0 balances across the first page. His stomach dropped. Another page. 0. He almost closed the laptop right there, then noticed a small tab labeled Archived. He clicked it. 1 address, no label, buried as if the owner had tried to hide it from himself. When he clicked to see the transaction history, the software fetched data from the network and a single line appeared. Incoming transaction. 10,000 Bitcoin. No outgoing transactions. For a few seconds, he did not really understand the number. It was just digits on a screen. Then he opened a price site and did the math, and the number on his screen became something that could change entire lives, maybe whole neighborhoods. The laptop fan spun harder, as if the machine also knew. The first instinct was to tell someone. Anyone. Miguel, his sister in Houston, the old professor. Instead, he closed the curtains even though it was daytime and turned off his phone. If those coins were actually spendable, this was not just a lucky thrift find. It was a crime story waiting to happen if he messed up. He typed questions into private browser windows. Who owns Bitcoin on found wallet? Is it legal to keep? How to prove good faith? The answers were messy. Property law, digital assets, debates in comment threads where strangers shouted at each other. Bit by bit, a picture formed. The coins did not sit in the wallet like cash in a drawer. They sat on the blockchain, and the wallet only held the private keys. Whoever had mined them was probably a tech worker from that shop, maybe one who had long since moved on or forgotten or died. He checked the tower again and found an old repair ticket taped to the side with a faded name and a Gmail address. That made his chest tighten. This was not faceless money anymore. It was somebody who had once eaten lunch in the back of that strip mall. He sent that Gmail address a short message from a new account, saying he had found an old computer and asking if they still used that email. An hour later, it bounced back undeliverable. The domain was still active, but the account was gone. Mini climax. Relief and guilt at the same time. Now the other problem. Moving a single coin through a major exchange triggered ID checks and tracking. Moving 10,000 at once would set off alarms he could not even imagine. He scheduled a consultation with a local attorney who advertised on Reddit as a crypto-friendly lawyer and paid for 1 hour with the last of his savings. When he sat in that tiny office with cheap blinds and a stacks of case files, he slid a printed screenshot across the desk. The lawyer stared at it and then at him and asked the question he had been dreading. How sure are you that absolutely none of this comes from anything illegal? The lawyer did not laugh, did not clap him on the shoulder, did not treat it like a movie. She only sighed and pulled a yellow legal pad closer. Together they built a timeline. Dumpster behind a real store. Sticker on the side of the tower. Email bounced. No sign that anyone had ever tried to access the coins after 2011. She explained that technically, keys in that wallet were like abandoned property, but that did not mean nobody could show up later with a claim. She recommended a slow, transparent process. Small test transaction to a new wallet he controlled. Chain analysis to confirm the coins were not linked to anything dark. Then, maybe, carefully engage in exchange and keep records that showed he had tried to find an owner. First mini climax, the test move worked. 1 coin left the old address and arrived in a new one Brandon generated himself. No alarms, no hacks. Chain analysis came back clean, with a dry PDF saying the coins came from early mining pools, back when people had barely valued them. He thought about donating half to charity right away, some grand gesture. The lawyer shook her head. Be a good person, yes, but also be systematic. You are not a myth, you are a client who will be audited. In the end, Brandon chose something more grounded. He set aside a portion of the coins, moved onto a hardware wallet stored in a bank safe deposit box. Another portion he began to sell in very small batches over months through regulated exchanges, reporting everything, paying taxes that made his eyes water. Reactions rippled through his small world. Miguel swung between joy and resentment that he had not dug behind the shop that day. His mother cried over the phone and asked if this meant he could finally finish his degree. Strangers online, when he anonymously posted a version of the story, accused him of lying for karma. Every step forced him to shrink the story in his own head, to look at it not as magic but as a complicated windfall that came with paperwork and risk. Yet underneath all the caution, a single decision kept solidifying. He did not want to disappear into some mansion outside the city. He wanted to go back to where the tower had been thrown away and build something there. The company started in the same strip mall, in a narrow unit 2 doors down from the tech shop dumpster. Brandon signed the lease with hands that still shook when he checked his crypto balances at night. He used part of his new legal money to buy tools, anti-static mats, shelves full of parts. He paid a designer friend to create a logo for a refurbishing business that specialized in old machines with new lives. He hired Miguel as his first employee on a real salary and promised him profit sharing instead of vague favors. Back at university, he walked into the registrar office and reactivated his enrollment, this time paying in full for the semester without putting anything on a card. The clerk did not know that his tuition had once been a stack of digits no one had cared about on a miner's hard drive. To her, he was just another returning student with a slightly older face. That normality grounded him more than any number on a screen. The city did what cities do. It did not stop spinning because one former dropout got lucky behind a dumpster. Customers came in with cracked school laptops and office towers full of dust. Many of those machines were not hiding fortunes, just essays and invoices and baby photos. Brandon treated them all with the same careful respect he had given that first beige tower. He put a sign on the wall that said "Data is life, handle with care." No one knew how literally he meant it. Sometimes, late at night when the shop was closed and the soldering iron had cooled, he would unlock the safe deposit box and hold the hardware wallet in his hand. It was a small plastic stick, light enough to forget in a pocket, heavy enough in consequence to rewrite everything he thought he deserved. He understood now that the real discovery had not been the coins or the old folder named Mining Rig Backup. It was the proof that value could be abandoned in plain sight by people who had stopped believing it mattered. What he chose to do next was simple, not grand. He kept studying. He kept fixing machines. He quietly funded an e-waste recycling program with the local community college so fewer towers would end their lives in landfills. And every time he passed the dumpster behind the tech shop, he glanced down without slowing, a small reminder that one day of curiosity had opened a door, and the only reason that door had led somewhere good was because he had walked through it step by careful step instead of sprinting toward the exit.